Welcome developers to this explainer. Okay, today we are taking a massive leap in how we interact with the web. I was checking out this excellent step-by-step breakdown from the NetNinja tutorial, and we're going to dive right into the absolute most efficient professional way to access and manipulate form elements using JavaScript. If you've ever felt like managing forms in your code is just, a bit tedious, you are in exactly the right place. By the end of this explainer, you're going to have a completely revamped toolkit for handling user data cleanly and dynamically. So think about your current projects for a second. Are you still using getElementById for every single form input? Because, let's be honest, we've all fallen into that beginner trap of tagging dozens of inputs with individual IDs. You write your HTML, you slap an ID on the first name field, one on the last name, another on the email, and before you know it, you've got this massive, clunky block of repetitive JavaScript just trying to grab those elements. I mean, sure, it works, but it clutters up your markup and makes your scripts way longer than they need to be.
Let's compare that old, tedious method with a much sleeker DOM object that's going to instantly upgrade your code structure. Looking at the old way, you're forcing the browser to search the entire document for one single ID. But the pro way? Utilizing document.forms. This approach is so much cleaner, much more organized, and it literally tells the browser, hey, I'm looking specifically for a form right now.
To get you writing this pro-level code, here is our procedural roadmap for today. We're covering 1. The document forms object. 2. Accessing element values. 3. Handling the focus event. 4. Handling the blur event. And finally, 5. Intercepting form submissions.
All right, section 1, the document forms object. Let's jump straight in and see how we can target an entire form dynamically without needing to spray ID attributes all over our HTML.
The secret here really relies on two simple steps. First off, if your HTML form has a standard name attribute, let's just say name equals my form, you can actually bypass IDs completely. No more ID soup. Second, you just jump into your JavaScript and target it directly using the document.forms object, followed by the form's name. So document.forms.myform. The browser instantly knows exactly which form you're talking about. It returns the exact same element as the old ID method, but it is way more contextually accurate.
Now, quick pro tip, as a best practice, you really should store this entire form object inside a variable. By declaring var myForm equals document.forms.myform, you're caching that DOM element right there in memory. And why does this matter? Well, because now you can easily call it later without retyping that whole long DOM path every single time you need to access a property. You just type myForm and boom, you've got the whole form right at your fingertips.
Moving right along to section 2, accessing element values.
Now that we've got that form stored in a variable, it is incredibly effortless to extract specific data from our users. I want you to visualize the DOM like a giant map. To get a specific input, we don't have to randomly search the whole document anymore. We just drill down systematically. We start at the document, go to the forms collection, pick our specific form name, and then go straight down to the child input element's name. If your input field for a user's name has the attribute name equals name, you literally just chain that right onto your variable. Let's see that in action. To extract the actual text the user typed into that input field, we simply append .value to our targeted input element. So myform.name.value. If the user typed the string ninja, this precise line of code reaches right into the DOM and returns the string ninja. It's incredibly clean.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how consistent the DOM actually is. Applying .value isn't strictly for text inputs. Say you have a drop-down select menu with the name color. You just type myform.color.value. It just as easily pulls the selected string, like blue. The logic stays completely uniform across all your different form elements.
Okay, section 3, handling the focus event. Let's see how all of this builds into interactive UI changes.
This brings us to the onfocus event. This is a JavaScript event triggered the exact millisecond a user clicks into or tabs onto a specific input field. It fires the moment an element becomes active. In most browsers, you'll see this indicated by that default little blue outline around the input box. Well, with JavaScript, we can actually take full control of that event.
We can intercept this activation by attaching an onfocus method directly to our input. We do this by writing myform.name.onfocus and assigning it to an anonymous function. Whatever code we drop inside the curly braces of this function, that's going to execute the split second the user clicks into that specific field.
Inside that function, we can dynamically alter the CSS. For example, we could reach into the style property of the element and write myform.name.style.border equals 4-pixel solid pink. Now, instead of that boring default browser behavior, we apply a thick 4-pixel solid pink border. It clearly highlights exactly where they're typing. Look, it might not pass a modern design review, but it's a fantastic visual way to prove your JavaScript is actually doing its job.
Which brings us right to Section 4, handling the blur event.
The crucial problem right now is that if a user clicks away to fill out something else, that bright pink border just awkwardly stays active on the first field. We need a way to undo our focus styling, and we do that with the onblur event. Blur is basically the structural opposite of focus. It fires the exact moment the user navigates away from the input field, meaning the element has become blurred, or, in other words, inactive.
By linking an onblur function to our input, exactly like we did with focus, we can program our JavaScript to strip away that pink border. Inside the onblur function, you simply target the border style again and set it back to an empty string, or whatever its default state was. This instantly snaps the form back to its clean default styling as the user moves down the page. It really makes your form feel alive and responsive.
Finally, Section 5, intercepting form submissions. We've reached the climax of our form manipulation here.
We are now becoming the gatekeeper of user data, and this is controlled by the onSubmit method. Now pay close attention to this part, because unlike focus and blur, which are attached to individual child inputs, onSubmit is an event triggered directly on the parent form element itself. We attach it to our main myForm variable.
Normally, clicking Submit instantly initiates a server-side handshake. It packs up all the data and fires it off to a server for validation and processing. But JavaScript gives us a really powerful tool here. By using the onSubmit event, we can entirely interrupt this default browser behavior. We can literally pause the submission process right in its tracks.
So why would we want to stop it? Well, by intercepting the submission process, you unlock the ability to perform client-side validation. This means you use JavaScript to check every single input field first. Did they forget an email address? Is the password way too short? You can check all of this locally, ensuring every field is filled out correctly before a single byte of data ever leaves the user's browser. It saves server processing power and gives your users instant feedback if they mess something up. It's a total win-win.
Mastering these DOM object properties, drilling down into document.forms, handling values, managing focus and blur is really just the beginning of professional web development. The real power is what comes next. So I'll leave you with this. How are you going to use the onSubmit gatekeeper to build flawless, validated user experiences in your next application? Take these techniques, apply them to your code today, and just watch how much cleaner and more interactive your projects become. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy coding!